So Christmas is coming up, and as usual with my little like sewing obsessed brain, I'm like, perfect time to make a dress. So I decided to kind of spoil myself a little bit this year for making it this far, and I decided to go to Spoonflower and get some custom fabric print. But not just any custom fabric, some Johanna Parker fabric. So Johanna Parker is this amazing artist. She has this incredibly unique design that you can kind of just spot right away. I found her on accident in 2017 when I was looking for household decor. It's because she specializes in these little seasonal designs, and a lot of the times they have a little bit of a spooky aesthetic kind of thrown into there, and they're so cute. I'm not sponsored or anything, I just adore this woman's work. And I about flipped when I found out she has a Spoonflower account where she uploads designs to them. And she's got so many cute designs. It was so difficult to finally like settle on one. I'm a very indecisive woman. But I did eventually decide on one, and I was very fortunate that Spoonflower had a small sale for free shipping. That was kind of the last push over the cliff that I needed to get the fabric. And so with this, I'm gonna make this just kind of like a very simple vintage dress. And I'll get into that in a moment, but really quick, I just want to talk a little bit about Spoonflower. So this is just a close-up of the fabric right here, and when it comes to Spoonflower, in my own personal experience, I adore them for their fast service, fast shipping, and absolutely outstanding customer service, but I have just a couple of things that I'm a little on the edge about when it comes to the actual prints. So right here, it might be showing up better on the camera, but whenever you go to get something printed, I kind of advise against using a lot of black color. So everything kind of turns out a bit more desaturated than it usually looks on the computer, and black unfortunately is kind of the biggest victim to that. So it usually comes out more as a dark gray. And I'll actually show you, because it's not too bad on this print because there's not as much black as there is teal and white and red. And I'll show you on another fabric that I had printed that I designed myself. And this one was meant to be black background with all the designs on top. And it ended up coming out gray, like a dark gray. It's still fine, I love it. However, the other issue that I have with them is that when you get their signature cotton, which is the cheapest fabric that they have, it is stiff as a board. I had to wash this fabric about 3 times with fabric softener. Might have done it a 4th time after I wore it, and you can see kind of like just how stiff it is, and it was way more than that when I even got it. So much so that I could kind of like pick up the fabric and then set it down on the ground, and it would hold its shape up like you had left it out in the like cold weather to freeze. And it loosened up just a little bit, but it never got nice and flowy like a regular cotton would be. And for this one, I ended up going with the sateen instead, which is a significant price jump on their website, and it still was just a little tiny bit stiff, but after one wash with fabric softener, it came out much better than that one. It doesn't wrinkle up nearly as bad. It actually wrinkles very minimally, and it still has a really nice flow to it. So I think from here on out, if I were to get more cotton from them, I would try to get the sateen, but it's just that price. It's a bit like, But those were just a couple of things I wanted to throw out there in case maybe someone is watching this and decides to go there themselves. A bit of a disclaimer is all. Since it was pretty expensive on my budget, I was really anal about the yardage, so I only got about 1.5 yards, which was just enough. Like I said, I'm going to be making a relatively simple pinup style dress. It'll have thin straps, a scoop neckline, princess seams, and a gathered rectangle skirt. So let's go ahead and start. As I said, since I have a very limited amount of fabric, I'm making a mock-up with some spare cotton first. I typically just drape the fabric over the mannequin and start wildly pinning and marking with Sharpie where all the seam and symmetry lines are. Once the pieces are cut out, I mirror them to create the full mock-up and do fittings to make sure it sits right. For the straps, I like to sew them on the back first and then pin them to the front while I'm wearing it. When the mock-up is finished, I just seam rip it apart and use it as a pattern to cut out the pieces. I'm trying really hard here to match the pattern across the bodice, but this is a new technique for me, so I struggle a bit with it. Okay, so these are the pieces I have sewn together for the blouse. The way I like to put them together is the front pieces together and then the back pieces together, but I keep those separate still. Then I'm going to sew them along the sides right here. After that, we can go ahead and do the facing that goes up along the top and then just assemble the rest of it from there on. I'd also like to bring up that my pattern matching still leaves a lot to be desired. I did okay around here. It is kind of impossible to pattern match when you've got the curves going along the front, especially with like darts and stuff, but I got it kind of close. The back panels, not so much. A little bit. It's right there a little bit, but yeah. The sides should match up pretty well though. It is, we'll see. I don't know. For the straps, I start by folding either end into the middle and pressing it down. Then folding that in half and pressing again. This way the raw edges are hidden and I can stitch it with relative ease. I need to create a facing for the top edge of the bodice, but I don't have enough of the print fabric to do this with, so I'm having to settle with some leftover black fabric that I had laying around. I like to pin the bodice as flat as I can to the fabric and then use that as a guide to cut out the neckline. When pinning the finished facing to the bodice, I prefer to already have the straps in place. It's a bit finicky here, but I fold them downwards so that the ends are sandwiched between the bodice and the facing when finished. Here I've got the facing all sewn and pressed. Got it so that you can't see any threads on the outside, which is exactly what I love it. But on the inside, you can see let me get that into frame. You can see the facing in here, and what I did was just sew it with right sides together and then flipped it over. The insides of the straps are on the inside as well. And then you can just use them to pull it right side out, thankfully. The end of the facing has been serged as much as I can. I don't have a serger, but I have a stitch relatively similar to it. The other thing I did was, I can't remember if there's like a proper term for this, but I've back stitched the facing so that it's actually stitched to the inside seam right here of the the outside fabric. But once again, like, there's no stitch that shows up right on the outside. And that just helps keep the facing, like, I'm failing words right now. It keeps the facing basically sitting flat, so it's less likely to start flipping back over, is what I mean to say. So now I can just attach the skirt to the bodice, and then we can get to the zipper, and it'll be finished! Here are the two panels I'm going to be using for the skirt. They took up the full width of the yardage and are about 27 inches long, I think, probably 26. I actually am not sure. I don't remember what I originally cut them out to be. Forgive me for this awkward framing. It's a huge piece and I'm trying to hide like a trash heap of fur back here for another project. So these are the skirt pieces. I've sewn them together. I've done what I do with most skirt pieces, however, which was that I left one of the panels as it is, but I had the second panel and I cut it in half. That way I then sewed it to the end of either side of that whole panel right here. The reason for that is because I'm going to be gathering this later, and it helps me keep those gathers even. That way I can match up the side seams with the side seams on the bodice, and then I know exactly where the end needs to go, where the zipper is. That way everything should gather pretty evenly because I know exactly what marks to hit where on the bodice, if that makes sense. So the next thing I'm going to do is hem the bottom of this, and then we can start preparing to gather the top and then stitching it onto the bodice. Here I'm pinning the bodice in place while being heavily supervised by my feline overlord. I'm pinning at the sides and ends first, and then pulling at that gathering to get it as even as possible across the entire waistline. When all the parts have been sewn together, all that's left is to put the zipper in and close the back up. As an extra little piece, I decided to make a quick model of one of Johanna's snowman designs to 3D print and make into a brooch. I did, however, forget that I have some of the worst acrylic paints known to man at my disposal, so that was a bit of a nightmare. Please don't judge me for this paint job. I did the best I could. It came out cute. It's not original. I've got about 5 other dresses I've made that look exactly like this, but it's because I like it and it's simple and it lets the pattern read. It's unfortunate yet a little bit funny that despite the fact that I live in Michigan, which is unforgivably cold sometimes, my answer to winter clothes is let's make something as cold unfriendly as possible. It's okay, they're for indoor use only. If you liked this, Please swing by Johanna Parker's website or her social media. I promise you'll love her designs. I know I do. Thank you for watching. If you like vintage fashion, feel free to stick around. I've got one more video that I plan on putting out right before New Year's if everything works out. But besides that, have a happy I'm stroking out. Have a happy holidays, and I'll see you later.